Well, nobody's perfect.
No, but we do okay. Yo, Joes, time for another classic G.I. Joe review, and I had been putting these up as polls on Patreon, and the patrons had been deciding which of the original Joes we'd be seeing. But this one is going to be a dedication to my good friend Eric. During one of the previous polls, he had mentioned that he secretly wished that Breaker would win the poll because it was my first Joe, it was a lot of people's first Joe, and Eric has been such a huge supporter of the channel on Patreon, as well as helping out on the commentaries. Always have a great time talking with Eric on the various cartoon commentaries and the Masters of the Universe live action movie commentary. So this one goes out to you, Eric. And Eric is a very talented artist, in addition to being very articulate, intelligent, and entertaining commentator. So check out his Instagram. It is at Uncle Deluxe Art. Lots of great original artwork on his Instagram there, as well as he's a very talented model maker with beautiful painting skills, great wear and wash on the models that he creates, and incredible backgrounds too. He's got a real eye for making a model look like it's an actual still frame from a movie. So check that out. Taking a look at Breaker today, and sometimes I wonder if the reason I picked Breaker when I first saw these in 1982, this is a 1983 swivel arm version, but my original Joe was a 1982 straight arm version, and it might have been because Breaker didn't have a gun. I don't know if that was just because I was a little kid, and maybe that appealed to me more. He didn't look violent. He didn't look like he was trying to shoot somebody. But it was probably a combination of the lack of gun and the headset that he had. He had this awesome headset, which actually goes up and down a little bit, and you couldn't do this with the original straight arm version, but with the swivel arm version, you have a little bit of movement there, and you're able to get him to sort of hold the microphone right there. So just that little bit of posability really set these 83 Joes apart from the Star Wars figures and similar figures without the elbow bend. And I remember being just really fascinated by, now this one is very close to, looks like it's close to breaking off, but the wire going from this to that was also a rarity in those days, having accessories connect to each other with these little wires. So wire feeds into the backpack, and even though he didn't come with a gun, that was plenty for me. Removable helmet, headset, and backpack. And I feel like this is risky, but I love to live life on the edge. So I'm going to try to take his helmet off here and hope that this holds together. Hear me, baby, hold together. I'm going to take the backpack out just to be on the safe side, and let's see if we can pull the helmet off. There we go. So here is a look at Breaker's backpack with some great little details there. I think it was supposed to be like a video set. This looks like a little screen there, little knobs, switches there, and it holds securely, this little plug here. It's not all that elaborate. It's not like a mushroom peg, but it holds. And then your standard G.I. Joe peg on the back here, and lots of range on the microphone, so that's cool. And a look at Breaker without the helmet, probably the beard. I like the look of the beard as a kid too. He just looks cool. He looks like one of those original 12-inch G.I. Joes with the big, thick, bushy beard, which I'm not sure why on the 25th anniversary version they never gave him the full beard. It looks more like stubble. And he's got some of the typical details of those original Joes. This one has rolled up sleeves, because even though he's a radio man and he's not actually part of the fight, radioing in airstrikes is very important too. He does have a grenade on there to take care of business, and also a knife, so you don't want to mess with Breaker. And then I I like the silver pockets too, because he is a tech guy. And for me, silver is a tech color. So they didn't go overboard on it, which I'm happy about. Black boots, standard G.I. Joe style boots that all of the original figures except Snake Eyes and I guess Scarlet didn't have. Let's try to pop this helmet back on here. Yeah, okay. So this very fragile plug has survived another day. And I took a quick peek through my file card collection and was surprised to actually find this is not a 25th anniversary Breaker file card, but an original file card which must have been included in a lot. To be honest, a lot of the time when these are included, I'll just throw them in a box of a bunch of file cards and not really look at them because I don't really have a place to display these. But this is a vintage Breaker file card. I did not pay $90 for this. This was more like probably $10 or $15 several years ago, before toy collecting really started to go up in value. But it's not the whole card, but it's a part of it, so it's kind of cool to have the original Breaker file card. And the coolest part about this, a classic Toys R Us sticker. It was $2.80 something cents. Always loved that bright orange Toys R Us sticker. Probably a big reason why orange is my favorite color in the 80s Toy Museum is orange. But we'll take a look at Breaker's file card here. He is the communications officer. So pre-86, the functions had the large font, and then the code names were smaller, which I always liked because it gave the impression that your job is more important than your own little, personality, your own little code name. So he is the communications officer. Code name is Breaker. And even on the file card, he doesn't have a really big bushy beard. It just looks like a 12 o'clock shadow. Interesting. So his real name is Kibby Alvin R. There's a serial number. Primary military specialty is infantry. Interestingly enough, you'd think he'd be some sort of, well, I guess they felt like that would be redundant if it was communications here. So he's on the front line, right next to Grunt, calling in for airstrikes and backup. And his birthplace is Gatlinburg, Tennessee, the volunteer state. Grade is E4, which is actually the same rank as Grunt, Corporal. And the bio reads, Breaker is familiar with all NATO and Warsaw Pact communication gear, as well as most world export devices, specialized education, signal school, covert electronics, Project Gamma, qualified expert M16, M1911A1, MAC-10 Ingram, classified, speaks 7 languages. Those are some of my favorite parts of G.I. Joe file cards. The classified information, you're not supposed to know it, but they're going to let you know it because you've got the file card. And the quote reads,
He's efficient and self-assured and has an uncanny ability to turn adverse situations to his favor.
Which isn't exactly the character that he had on the Sunbow animated series. He was more of a nobody's perfect type of guy, but he does okay. And one of the real advantages to Breaker not having a gun was that, for me, he was the perfect guy to ride on the ram cycle. So everyone else, if they were on the ram cycle, you'd have to store their gun like rock and roll, store their gun there, or just not have it on there at all. But with Breaker not having an actual weapon, then you don't have that little bothersome itch of, well, where's his gun? Because with rock and roll, his whole personality is pretty much the big gun. Stalker has only one accessory, so it's just not all that cool that his one accessory doesn't get to be displayed. The Ram has always been a little finicky to fit figures on. There's several different ways to fit a figure on there, but we fit him on there. The thing that I always loved about Breaker on the Ram cycle is that you don't have to store his weapons anywhere. He's wearing his backpack, his helmet, his microphone. It's all on there while he's on the Ram. So even though he didn't come included with the Ram, I always felt like he was the perfect rider for it. And maybe a lot of that had to do with the fact that Breaker is pictured on the Ram's box art, but it just seems to make perfect sense to me. And since he doesn't come with a gun on his single card, that will do nicely. That'll make up for his lack of any sort of weaponry. And to finish off, here's a comparison with one of the anniversary Breakers. The really neat little accessory with one of them was, this is supposed to be bubblegum, because Breaker, his trademark look in the comics is that he's always chewing on bubblegum and blowing bubbles. So this is a little bubble that you can actually, it's a very cool design that you can just stick it on the microphone. And so from a certain angle it looks like he's blowing a bubble. From here it doesn't. I guess you could use sticky tack to actually stick it on his mouth, but for what they had to work with, I think that's a pretty innovative design. And he has a removable helmet just like the original Breaker, and it is actually the exact same microphone on the helmet as the original one. It's just a remold. This one feels a little less rigid on the anniversary version, so you can bend it a little bit more without breaking it. It's also just a tiny bit darker. The one on the original one is a little more of a dark gray, and this one is more of a, the anniversary one is more of a black, but it is identical. The backpacks, interestingly enough, this Breaker came with a Flash backpack, not a Breaker backpack, with 2 ports in it instead of 1. So still tech looking, it's got gauges and stuff, but I mean, if it's going to be an anniversary Breaker, then why not give him a retooled original Breaker backpack that'll fit in this guy's back. And he's got a grenade on his chest like the original Breaker. His sleeves aren't rolled all that far up, so not past his elbows. He's got Duke arms, so he doesn't actually have any range. And this is disappointing about many of those original 25th anniversary G.I. Joes. These really limited elbows, so he can't. This is a figure that is decades newer than the original, and he can't even hold his microphone, so that's disappointing. He does have a removable harness though, like the original, a lot of the anniversary Joes based on the original Joes, and a removable pistol. So Breaker finally with a gun, with a weapon, so he's got something to defend himself with, even though it's kind of hard for him to hold it. It's a really small handle, and yeah, so kind of typical fare for anyone who has the anniversary figures. They're kind of nice to just sit on the stand there, but in terms of actual functionality, not all that good. And this Breaker is especially packing because he's got another gun in his side holster, which you see it's so loose I've put a little bit of sticky tack on the end. So that's interesting that the original Breaker had no guns, and sort of to make up for it, this guy can dole out some 2-gun justice. And they both have black boots, although the anniversary boots not really all that inspired by the original ones, and no silver pouch on the side either. So in terms of anniversary figures, this one isn't really all that faithful to the original one, not as much as some of the other figures have been in the anniversary line. So that's 1983 Breaker, the G.I. Joe Communications Man. Thank you so much for watching this video. Hope you enjoyed it. And if you want to help decide future G.I. Joe toy reviews, check out patreon.com/MichaelMercy. More polls coming on there. and a huge G.I. Joe video is coming very soon. It is the History of G.I. Joe 1986 edition. This one is going to be an absolute beast. It's taken quite some time. A lot of filming and a lot of editing is going into it. Having a blast, playing around, futzing with these old toys, especially Sergeant Slaughter. Slaughter's going to take the Cobras to the slaughterhouse in this history video, so watch for that very soon. Was Breaker your first Joe too? If he was, let me know in the comments section below. If you enjoyed the video, feel free to share it so that your fellow Joe fans can know about it. And to join the tribe, hit subscribe. Till next time.
Yo, Joe!